Welcome to the Holistic Soul Sisters Radio, a channel created to help you heal holistically and grow spiritually. I'm your host, Mandi Rose. I'm not afraid to talk about taboo subjects, so nothing is off limits here. Make sure you hit subscribe and get ready to learn more from me and other experts on all things health, spirituality, astrology, lifestyle, relationships, and so much more. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's begin. Hello, my holistic soul sisters. I am finally back with a new podcast episode, and this one is very much overdue. This has been a topic that's been requested by so many of you, especially some people that follow me on Instagram and see month after month me posting whenever I get my cycle, my routines, my rituals, and how I've actually turned this into a sacred time of the month instead of a taboo time of the month. And so in today's episode, I'm really going to dive in for you and kind of share a little bit about my story, my journey with my cycle, and how it's been totally a roller coaster until this past year when I met a very dear friend of mine, and I will teach you a little bit of what she taught me. I want to bring in the holistic health side of it, of course. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the Chinese medicine perspective, some hacks and tips and tricks that you can do around the time of your cycle. And I want to share with you, some ritual ideas that you can incorporate as well. So this will definitely be a loaded episode. I don't really have a structure to it, so I hope it just flows out very easily. And I just think it's so important to share this with you all because unfortunately, society makes our periods and our cycles such a taboo topic. And it is something that has affected my life personally, and I know it affects so many other women. So we're going to dive in today. I hope this episode really inspires you to view this time of the month so differently. And if you are already at that age where you no longer cycle, hopefully you can use this information to inspire the women in your life that are getting their periods still and help them kind of change their mindset around it as well. So I'm just glad you're here for this episode. I have not recorded in quite some time. My last episode was way back in October when I went on my 4-day spiritual retreat. It took me some time to really recover from that in the sense of downloading more information I received during those 4 days, reprocessing my energy, figuring out how to integrate the new version of me with my current life. And, the holidays were wild, I think, for everyone. So, I am really committed to coming back on the podcast and sharing more information with you. Holistic Soul Sisters, we focus on healing holistically and growing spiritually, and they really are intertwined. The lens I usually take is let's talk about the energy of all of it. When we're talking about holistic health and healing, we're talking about the energy of food and the vibration at which we do exercise and our daily lifestyle, and looking at that lens of, it's not just about A, B, C, do this, do that, but it's about how do you feel energetically, and how does this food make you feel energetically? How does this workout make you feel? And all of that then relates to our spiritual side, our energetic bodies. And so as we're talking about in this episode, about our periods, I am going to sprinkle in both sides because they really are interconnected. So please let me know over on the Instagram, holistic.soul.sisters, how you feel about this episode. Let me know if your story is similar to mine. And if you have any hacks or rituals that you do around the time of your cycle, please share them with our Holistic Soul Sisters. If you're in the Facebook community, go ahead and share that in there, or hop over to the Instagram and comment on the post for this episode. We're better when we're in tribe, and that's actually a lot of what we're going to talk about in today's episode. When we get our cycles, we're meant to be in tribes. So that is my mission here with Holistic Soul Sisters, to build a community where we can heal together, grow together, be spiritual together, and all of those things. So let's go ahead and dive into this episode all about our cycles and making them more sacred. So I'm totally going to start out with my story of my personal journey with my period and why that has led me to today and now, and actually making like a ritual and a ceremony out of it every single month. See, when I first got my cycle, I was kind of like a late bloomer. I was 14. And, I was like at that age where you just like don't want people to know that you have it. I think most girls in their middle school years or high school years like don't want anyone to know that they have their period. And so from a very young age, I hated that time of the month to the point that I had the worst PMS. I couldn't go to school. I would have intense migraines. And when you're like 14, 15 years old, you don't really have a pain tolerance. So it would debilitate me. I wouldn't be able to go to school. I'd have the worst cramps. I mean, it was just completely awful at that young age, which actually led me to be put on birth control. My mom took me to the doctor and they recommended I take the depot shot. So I did that. Also, an awful experience. Now I am, 15 years old and I started bleeding after getting my first depot shot to the point where I bled for almost 3 months straight. Again, not a good experience when you're that young. I was very anemic. I've always been kind of on the thinner side. So it just was not a good situation at all. So after that, they said the only solution for me to stop bleeding would to be go on birth control. So then I was put on birth control. And from the age of 15 to about 17, I think I've tried like multiple different kinds of birth control because some wouldn't work, some would make me break out, some would make me feel awful. You guys know the story if you've been on birth control. So here I am at 17 years old, finally on a progesterone based birth control, and it worked for me. I didn't really have to get a cycle. I could skip, the placebo pills and go a couple months without a cycle. And life was okay at that time. So that kind of just led me till I was about 23 years old, 9 years on birth control. And that's when we started seeing all those ads on TV for Yasmin and all of those birth control pills that were progesterone based that can lead to blood clots and all these other crazy side effects. So I thought, oh gosh, okay, I should probably get off of this birth control and see what my body does. Maybe it's changed. Maybe the PMS won't be so bad. And so I got off birth control, which just led to a horrible rebound effect. I came off birth control and did not get a period for 9 months. But in those 9 months, I gained a bunch of weight. I was completely bloated. If you saw pictures of me, you'd be like, what the heck? That is so wild. Which then, after 9 months, I'm like, okay, this is not cool, right? And I go to a doctor and they pretty much tell me it's my thyroid and my hormones are so wackadoodle. And honestly, looking back now, I truly believe that a lot of it is genetics. My family has always had issues with periods, with fertility. My one aunt could never have a child. The other aunt on my mother's side had miscarriages. So, there was a genetic component to this at a very young age. And now here I am at 23 years old being diagnosed with a thyroid disorder and horrible hormones. So that just led to masking the problem again, but instead of birth control pills, we masked it with Synthroid or thyroid medication. So, as far as my period goes, I'm now 24 years old, having to experience regular cycles that are completely awful. And when I would get my period, I would just be so miserable, completely miserable. And that happened, from 24 to about 30 years old. And then at 30, I reversed that thyroid disorder and try to get a lot of my hormones regulated through a very extensive diet and nutritional program and supplementation and doing all these kind of extreme things for my health, but totally necessary, right? So now here I am, 30 years old, getting married, excited to be in a long-term relationship. And I would get my period at the worst times. Like, not even joking, the worst times. I got engaged and got my period that night. I got my period on the day of my wedding, like literally on the day of. Anytime we would go out of town, go on vacation, honeymoon, any of that, I would get my period like day one or day two of the vacation. This happened for 3 years straight, and it was completely awful. So now here I am in my 30s getting my period kind of sort of regularly. Never had a regular period. In all honesty, sometimes it would be a month, sometimes two, sometimes 6 weeks. I've never really had a regular cycle. So here I am in my 30s, finally getting a decent ish kind of cycle with less PMS symptoms, but it comes at the worst timing. So now that leads to a lot of anger and frustration related to my cycle. So you can see now here I am at 33 years old and have never had a good experience with my period. And we couple that on top of the shame of our society, all the other things that I'm about to talk about. But for my personal story, it was not an exciting journey. In addition to that, my whole life, I've been very caught in masculine energy, meaning I want to work, I want to be busy, I want to be productive. I'm type A, I love to do lists. Like I'm just always going, and doing. That is very masculine. So, our periods are a time of sacredness and it is our femininity. That is what allows us to be mothers and to have this sacred feminine essence, but I'm hating it, literally hating it due to all of my history. And I'm also constantly leaning towards masculine energy. So you can see how there was like this complete imbalance. The more I leaned in my masculine, the more I was angry when I got my cycle, the worse my cycles would be because it's an energy, right? And, this just kind of went on and on until I got really sick with mold. My husband left me. My whole world fell apart. You guys know the story. If this is your first time tuning into Holistic Soul Sisters Radio, Holistic Soul Sisters was actually born during this crazy chaotic time of my life, my dark night of the soul, I call it. And I have 2 podcast episodes on the health side of it, my mold journey, and the divorce side of it as well. So feel free to go back and listen to those episodes after this one. But now here I am at 33 years old, and I did a lot of healing with my mold. I got rid of, so many toxins, parasites, all these things. And now here I am going through this chaos in my life and I'm getting regular cycles again. I was in such surrender of all the shit that was happening in my life. I was getting out there, single, trying to figure out who I am, tapping into my spirituality, learning about astrology, using crystals, like getting in this feminine flow of just surrendering to life and allowing people to be there for me. And so, with that being said, I now meet my current partner, and he brought out such a feminine essence in me. And when I met him, it was the first time in my life that I got regular periods. Like month after month, they were almost on time to the 28-day cycle. I mean, it was just like, what is happening? One was the physical, I'd healed from mold, and the other was I was allowed to be in my feminine essence. And he really encouraged me to be in my feminine, especially at the beginning of the relationship. So, this whole journey has been a long one. And then around that time, I also really got into astrology. You guys know I'm a relational astrologer. I've always been into astrology since I was a very young girl. But at about 33, I really dove all in. And as I surrendered, as I tapped into my spirituality and my feminine, I opened up this gift within inside of me, this very sacred, past life gift to be able to understand astrology and to read people's birth charts with an intuitive, gifted guidance. And so, as I'm diving into astrology, I realize that our moon cycle is in alignment with our feminine period cycle, right? A lot of people have already known this. I've always known this, but I didn't realize, like, honestly, as women, the moon in astrology is the mother. It is the feminine. It rules our intuition. It rules our emotions. It rules the flow of life. It is a water energy. And so the moon is feminine energy in astrology, and it's on a 28-day cycle. And that is what our period cycle should be. So if I'm going to follow my life based on astrology and the sun seasons and my birth chart and the birth chart of other people, I had to now step up and honor this moon cycle and the moon cycle within me. And that's really when, the shifts just started to happen more and more about my perspective on my period, on, the ceremonial time. Then fast forward to I'm 35 years old, and through divine alignment, divine connection, I meet my dear friend Rose. And I have posted about Rose on my Instagram page many, many times. You can go ahead and find her on Instagram at Healed by the Rose. And she helps women through her spiritual gifts, her intuitive psychic gifts, tap into their feminine essence. And as I started following her content and getting to know her personally on a friendship level, I realized that every time she would have her period, it was a time of sacredness, of receiving, of honoring her flow. And I just thought, wow, that's so different. Like, who would do that, right? Where does that even like come to her mind? Until I understood the importance of this whole thing. And that really cracked me open and changed everything for me. So, if you're not following her, I highly encourage you to. She's taught me so many things. And we've also done like womb healing sessions because of all this anger and resentment and hatred I've built up for my womb space in a Reiki session. So, that was absolutely amazing. And I will be sharing that session here on the podcast as well, and getting her on the podcast to kind of share a little bit about her magic too. So that kind of changed everything for me. And I wanted to really share that story. I know that was a little in depth and very long, but I think so many women can relate. And I think so much of my story can kind of hit home for so many women because this is a journey we all go through in our society today. See, that is a next big topic about our periods and the shame around it and the way that it's treated in our modern day society. We've gotten so far away from the ancient practices, the ceremonial, experiences and the rituals that were dedicated to women's cycles in our modern day world. We live in this very patriarchal world where it's like the more you get done, the longer your to-do list, the more productive, the more money you make, the more you win at life. And that really discredits the capability and the power of the feminine, who doesn't have to get anything done, that has a power by just being present, just being in the receiving mode. And so, as far as it aligns up with our period, this patriarchal society says, oh, you got your period? Oh, well, ignore it and get the hell over it, right? Put a tampon in, get back to the gym, get back to work, go swimming, do all the things that you should normally be doing. Oh, you have your period? Too bad, so sad. And that's what we've been taught. I mean, I grew up on tampon commercials where it's like women running and women doing all these boss bitch things. Oh, and they have their period? Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And this like really is a huge opposition to what we actually should be doing on our periods. That was not determined by women. I guarantee you no woman was like, "Oh yeah, I want to put a tampon up there and get back to work." Women internally were like, "I want to rest," right? We're going to talk all about that in just a moment. So understanding the way that the society is structured is not in alignment with the way our feminine essence should be in general, but definitely in that 1 week of our month. Now, in addition to that, there is a lot of period shaming, right? Like everything around our period is very shameful. Like, heaven forbid you bleed through your pants, right? Heaven forbid you don't use a tampon. Heaven forbid put your tampon in the, trash bin and somebody sees it. There is so much secrecy and taboo around the topic of your period. You would never walk up to anyone, that you don't know and just be like, yeah, I'm on my cycle. So like, I just need to be gentle. And even within relationships, I'm going to give you some tips at the end of this podcast. In relationships with your lover, your partner, the people in your life closest to you, especially those who live with you, they should know your period cycle and they should honor it as much as you should. So, men don't want to know about that. They go, ew, gross. I don't want to hear about your period. But at the same time, they're watching war and violent TV and movies where there's blood everywhere. But you don't want to talk about me bleeding from my sacred space. That's such a, shaming and secrecy and patriarchal view on our feminine bodies. So, this just leads to anxiety. I think most women from a very young age, like I did in middle school and high school, and even getting my first job and, well through my 20s, not wanting people to know I was on my cycle and the secrecy and the taboo around it led to a lot of anxiety, right? How many times in your life have you gotten your period out in public or at a random time and like you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And you're go into fight or flight mode, your nervous system gets dysregulated, and now you have a massive anxiety. That energetic cord that you just tied to your period is there. And I never realized the energetics of this. This mental state that you create when you get your period is going to then disrupt your flow as you move forward. And there are so many women that have problems with their cycle, that have problems with their period, that actually have problems with their fertility in general. And we can't discredit that, on a physiological level. Yes, there's hormone imbalances. Yes, there's dietary things. Yes, there's, logical, scientific explanations for fertility issues. But there is a massive energetic component to this that's massively overlooked. I mean, that's your sacral chakra, your womb space that you are sending negative messages to internally in your mind to that part of your body. It's going to energetically fight back at you and scream louder and have stronger, cramps and more headaches to be like, stop, stop. I don't want you to go to work. I want you to stop and I want you to pay attention to me, the womb. I want you to honor me. Give me, your love and your attention and your energy in a kind, compassionate way and not in an anger, hatred, taboo, secrecy, anxious kind of way. And in addition, the last thing I want to mention to this is if you catch this in your life from the maybe men in your life, the people in your life, even women in your life, this is something that we can all do to break that taboo. And that is if people are using condescending terms around our cycles. I've said it. I know other people around me have said it. I don't shame them for it. It is what it is. But we can now bring awareness to this. And that's such a simple statement like, oh, are you just PMSing? Right? Are you just PMSing? Oh, is it that time of month? Those kind of things that give like a derogatory message around the sacred cycle. And this happens all the time. And every time you hear it, that's going to affect the brain and the message we send to our womb space. So, just something to bring up, food for thought. Again, my whole podcast isn't here to tell you what to do or how to be. I'm just here to talk about taboo topics, bring them to light, and share my perspective. Just give you maybe a little food for thought, a little nugget that you can take with you and ponder on and spread out to those around you. So, as we kind of move forward in this topic, we kind of have to get back to the cycles. When we talk about the patriarchy and men being a certain way and women being a certain way, the feminine, the masculine, whatever you want to label it, we really just, as men and women, biologically, hormonally, cycle different. Men cycle on a daily basis. The way that the testosterone, their master hormone, fluctuates is on a 24-hour cycle. This is why men can get into a rhythm in their day very easily. They're very cyclical with what time they like to wake up, what time they like to go to the gym, how long they like to work, when they want to eat dinner, and when they want to lay down and go to bed. I mean, men can hit the pillow and boom, they're out, right? They wake up at the same time every day. They are very much in a 24-hour cycle. But us as women, we cycle on a 28-day cycle, the moon cycle, with our hormones. So the way that our progesterone and estrogen, fluctuate is not within 24 hours of a day like men, but it's over the course of 28 days. And that is, why we call it our moon cycle, because the moon cycles in 28-day periods. So, that's just something from the holistic health perspective I wanted to kind of put in there. And so when we're talking about this patriarchal, modern day society that benefits men, it's not just benefiting men as far as their ability to, be successful or to make money. Like it's deeper than that. Like it's affecting the women who cycle in a different way than men. There is a hormonal and biological explanation for why women can't be as productive and why they can't be, as hardworking, every day of the month. Because we're just different and that's okay. And we have to be okay with that internally and honor the difference and honor the magic that we can create instead of, again, having resentment and shame and all of those things. It really goes back to like ancient cultures and how far we've gotten away from the sacredness of our periods. Back in ancient cultures, many different ancient cultures all over the world, when we first got our periods, it was a very, very sacred time. it was actually ceremonial. There would be a whole feast, and men and women would participate. And the woman who was bleeding for the first time would be dressed in beautiful garments and jewelry. They'd be the center of attention. It would be a celebration, not a shame that we have in this modern day society. Like going to school and your first cycle, how embarrassing, how humiliating. What if you got it at school? Like no one's going to talk about it. And then there's this whole conversation of, well, don't tell dad, and I don't want my brothers to know. And like all of that stuff, right? So many women can totally relate to what I'm saying. And we've just gotten away from this sacred ceremonial transition of childhood to adulthood that was very important back in the day. And in addition to that, as women kept bleeding, they would meet together around that time of the month. It is scientifically proven that women who live together or spend a lot of time together will cycle together. And that happened obviously in ancient cultures as well, where most of the women in the tribe would get their periods around a new moon or a full moon. And when they would get their cycles, they would go to what's called the red tent. And the red tent was kind of the area where these women would gather together. They would support each other and nurture each other, gather together in community and ritual and peace and rest. And the men would protect the red tent, right? So the women didn't have to worry about threats from invaders or worry about hunting or gathering or getting food. They were just kind of nurtured in this safe space that the men would hold. And that's really about the feminine and masculine energy, right? Women are meant to kind of receive and to rest and to be cared for. And the masculine would step in and make sure that they could stay in that energetic space. And so they'd meet in these red tents and get together and just almost like celebrate the ability for them to conceive. When we really look at it at the end of the day, getting our period is just telling our bodies, hey, you are fertile, meaning you are healthy and you are capable of bringing life to this earth. Like, what an amazing thing. That again, in our modern day society is completely overlooked and taken for granted. Women who are infertile wish they could be fertile. And women who are fertile and having regular periods oftentimes wish they could be infertile. That's why they're on birth control and diminishing their ability to have periods. And, if we could just change the perspective, again, the energy and the conversations we're having with our body from a young age, then maybe later in life, we wouldn't lead to infertility issues that are not biological. Like I said, I do respect that there are real scientific reasons for that. But when women go through all these testings and everything seems normal and you're still not able to get pregnant, what is your energetic connection to your womb space, right? Going back to that. And so, did you honor when you got a cycle and said, oh my gosh, I am fertile. This means I'm healthy. That's amazing. Like, holy crap, I am powerful. Powerful. See, in ancient cultures, the Greeks specifically saw women being able to have a period as superpowers because they thought that the moon was extremely powerful. This goes back to astrology and ancient traditions, but the moon is able to influence the tides. The moon is able to do like magical things. I mean, it honestly holds the earth on its axis so we don't go into a dark age or an ice age. The moon is scientifically, astronomically very, very powerful. But in, Greek mythology and in astrology, the moon is so powerful that it has the ability to affect our emotions. It has the ability to affect our periods, which our periods, again, are the portals from the other realms into this 3D reality on Earth. So it is a very powerful, sacred thing that, again, modern day society completely overlooks. So, with all that being said, we really have to honor this as a divine feminine energy. And when we get our periods every single month, we need to honor that and receive. Go into receiving. When I get my period, I immediately pause. Like my life goes on complete pause because nothing that's going on in my life is as important as those first few days of my cycle. It's only 2 to 3 days out of 30, a very small fraction of my month. And yeah, okay, we have weekends. So you take weekends out of your schedule and then you have other events. And then that leaves how much time to work? right? The masculine time, the time to work. But I honestly don't care. I'm going to honor my body first and foremost. And so if I have a call or I have something scheduled, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pause. I'm going to cancel what I need to cancel, and so be it. Now, I know that's really hard for a lot of people, especially if you're in like corporate America, you're in the patriarchal world. So, again, like this is not to judge or to shame, but I'm going to give you some inspiration shortly and ways that you can still honor your cycle and participate in the patriarchal world. I mean, we can totally hack this. But for me personally, I just think it's so important to just honor that first day, at least, if not the first 2 days. And the question I always get is, well, when you cancel with people, like, don't you feel like you let someone down, or don't people get upset with you or find you unpredictable? And I just say, no, it's a very good teaching opportunity for me where I can now teach people around me and lead by example that it's okay. If I have an appointment with you and you call me up and you tell me you just got your period and you need to rest, I'm going to honor that within you. And those who feel let down or upset by me canceling due to my period, they just have not began to honor their own cycle. So I'm just going to give them grace and I'm going to love them through that, but they're just again operating in the patriarchal world and the way that they always have been programmed to be, and that is not something that I judge in others. So, again, I just use it as a teaching opportunity, and that is maybe something you can do as you move forward as well. I'd love to kind of share this example that happened to me with a client I was working with. And she is in her early 20s and has had health conditions, all the way from her teens to her current day. And as we started working together, she had a lot of ADD, a lot of nervous system dysregulation, a lot of organ imbalance, and toxicity in general, which is very common for women in their early 20s. And something I started talking to her about was honoring herself, giving herself permission to not have to do things all the time. She's very much in that masculine energy, especially with the ADHD, always needing to be busy and never feeling like there's enough time in the day, which leads to her nervous system being in fight or flight and, the whole thing. I can make a whole separate podcast on this. And something I kind of shared with her right away is learning to rest and being okay with it, giving herself permission to do nothing and saying to herself, I don't have to. I don't have to go to that job. I have other options. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And so that was kind of the beginning of her journey. And then we started talking about periods, and when she got her period, to take that, at least those 2 days, as a permission to rest. If it's too hard for her on a Monday afternoon to stop in her day and take some calm time, at least promise me that she'll take calm time on her first and second day of her cycle. It's only 2 days out of the month. And that was her practice. And as she did that, she started to realize the importance of how much that was helping her throughout the other 28 or 29 days of the month, right? And then we had a coaching call where she told me about a time that she went with her friend shopping, her roommate actually. And so, they live together. So they're on the same cycle for the most part. And they were out one day, running around, doing all these errands together as roommates. And all of a sudden, her roommate got her period. And she wasn't feeling well. She was having cramps. And immediately, my client said to her roommate, well, let's go home. It's time to go home. We need to go rest. And her roommate was like, no, I feel bad. Like, I can stick it out. Like, don't worry about it. Let's just finish our errands and then I'll rest later. And she, like, oh my God, I get goosebumps. And I'm just so proud of her because she said to her roommate, absolutely not. We can do all of that later. This is your time. We're going to go home. I'm going to make you some warm soup and you're going to rest. And like, oh my gosh, how amazing did that feel for her roommate, where her roommate got to be in her feminine energy? Her friend stepped up into the masculine and said, don't worry, I got you. I'm creating a safe space for you. You don't have to feel shame for your period. Like, oh my God, the goosebumps I'm having right now, like, I seriously want to cry because how powerful was that to share with her friend and allow her friend to be in the feminine receiving mode. and to not feel ashamed for her cycle for probably the first time in her life. And that's a ripple effect. And, they went home and they rested, and, the story could go on, but you get the point. Like, it's so powerful on an energetic level. And when we affect our bodies on an energetic level, it will be affected on a physiological level. The safety and security, the reduction of the shame will reduce the cortisol and the adrenaline and the fear, which calms our nervous system. When we calm our nervous system, we're able to be in a calm, safe space where our bodies can start resting and healing and producing healthy hormones, where we can get out of fight or flight. When we come out of fight or flight, then we are telling our bodies and our wombs, this is safe. This is a safe world for me to bring a baby into. You know, like, our bodies are smart, and your womb is going to feel the nervousness, the anxiety, the dysregulation, the stress. And what body is going to be like, oh, yeah, it seems like a safe world to bring a kid into? That person's always stressed. There must be a tiger, a bear. They're always running from the lion. Like, I don't want to be capable of bringing a child into that kind of world. And so we just affect it on an energetic level, which affects it on a physiological level, which fixes it on a hormonal level. And we're just going about this whole thing in a different way than what we've been trained our whole life. So it's just very powerful. So, with that, I want to kind of give you some hacks and tips and tricks that you can utilize in your own life around the time of your cycle. I am going to come at it with a little bit of a holistic health perspective and kind of share with you about Chinese medicine and what Chinese medicine says in correlation to our periods. Chinese medicine, has been around for centuries, and the way that they approach the body is on an energetic level, but also very much on a nourishment level, right? What we're putting into our bodies, what we're putting near our bodies, all of that. And Chinese medicine talks about the period, and when we are cycling and eliminating blood from our uterus, we are using a massive amount of energy to make that happen, right? I mean, we can feel that in our bodies as the uterus contracts. That is a muscle. And just like when we go to the gym and use our muscles to weight lift or use our muscles to go running, when muscles are contracting and working very hard, they are burning through glycogen stores. And our glycogen storages are replenished through carbohydrates. And that's why people who go running have to have a very high carb diet, or after we work out, we crave carbs. Same thing when we are cycling, especially on day 1 and day 2 of our cycle. When our uterus is cramping really, really hard, that muscle needs calories to continue the process of flushing out the blood. And so usually we're going to be craving a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, and just honor that. Like, if you are on a diet, if you are trying to watch your weight, like, this is not the time. This is a day or two of the entire month where you can just honor what your body needs in that moment. So, again, take out the shame, take out the guilt, take out the judgment, and just honor that you might need some more carbs around this time. And honestly, you might just be more hungry overall. So, just pay attention to that from the Chinese medicine perspective. In addition to that, around this time, this cycling and the shedding of our lining affects our serotonin levels. I could go into a whole podcast episode around the phases of our cycle, the follicular phase, all of it. But I'm not going to do that right now. I just want you to know that at the time of you getting your period, it's going to affect your serotonin levels. So you are going to crave things that make you happy, like chocolate or your favorite foods or activities that light you up and bring you joy. Again, honor that. Now, the one thing that's very important with Chinese medicine, and I implement like Bible when I get my cycle, is no cold. You do not want cold foods, cold drinks, even cold in your environment, because you want to warm up the blood to help it flow out faster. When we are cold, our muscles contract, right? Our blood vessels really constrict. And we don't want to constrict anything around the time of our cycle. We want it to flow out. We want to get all of the lining out because we don't want that stagnation. We don't want lingering tissue left in our uterus. So the warmer, the better. Even Chinese medicine says no washing your hair because, the top of our head is our crown chakra. It is related to different organ systems. And now you put cold water on your head in washing your hair, and that can affect the uterus as well. So, again, just warm foods, soups, and hot meals, even like hot teas and hot beverages and bone broth. I use a hot water bottle, like a hot compress on my uterus. I like to be in a warm room, take a hot bath, get in the sauna, anything that's going to kind of keep things flowing. In addition, the organs that are really impacted at the beginning of our cycle is the liver and the spleen. So you want to do things like I call it liver love, foods and herbs and things that help your liver. The liver is the master detoxification organ, obviously, and it is responsible for hormone conversion. So typically when I work with clients and they have hormone issues, we're going to go straight to the liver. Their liver is overloaded, it's toxic, it's not methylating properly, et cetera, et cetera. So, around the time of our cycle, since it deals so much with our hormones, I'm going to do a lot of liver love. I'm going to drink nettle tea. I'm going to take herbs and tonics and tinctures that have other herbs like dandelion root and burdock and other things that's going to help support the liver as it's going through its process. And the spleen as well. The spleen is very much connected to our immune system and, moving and flushing out blood. So, just nourishing things. With that being said, we need to also promote more blood enriching foods around the beginning of our cycle. So that's things like beets, kidney beans, dates. Dates are amazing. So here's a little hack. You can write this down or make a note in your notes section. When I get my cycle and I'm craving chocolate and I'm craving carbs, I actually make these date bites in the evening. So I'll take a date and I'll kind of tear it open, and then I'll put some almond butter or nut butter or sun butter, in the middle of the date. And then I'll take 100% dark cacao nibs. I get them from Trader Joe's, but you can get them from any other places. And just roll my nut butter date in the dark chocolate nibs. And it's like the most magical, delicious treat, full of carbs, makes me happy, increases my serotonin levels, has the chocolate in there, and it has the dates for blood nourishment. And then also, you can also have a lot more beef. So if you're someone that avoids, meat or red meat in specific, I do honor that around the time of your cycle. Maybe you don't want to eat it the entire month, but those couple days, it's going to be very nourishing to help build up your iron again. So that is kind of the overview on the Chinese medicine perspective. I could go so much more into the topic of our cycles and what to eat for the different cycles and all of that. So let me know again within the community or DM me or, however you want to message me if this is a topic that would be more beneficial for you. And then lastly, a couple other hacks that are really helpful for me is again, the heat. I still to this day get horrible cramps. It's something I'm still working on. I'm currently about to start a parasite cleanse, which is extremely helpful for hormones and fertility. So, I'm going to talk more about my fertility journey in a separate podcast episode. Because as you've all known, I have not drank alcohol in almost a year and been working on my hormones and all of that. But again, another topic for another day. But with that being said, when it comes to the PMSing, I still get it pretty badly. And when I get my cycle, I get horrible cramps, like debilitating pain that I have to kind of work through. And it's getting better. But it is, the time of the month that I take an ibuprofen. And I kind of hate saying that, but I'm trying to just honor it within myself. As a holistic health coach, I'm a big no on, ibuprofen and all of that due to the damage it can cause to the stomach and our gut lining and et cetera, et cetera. But I have to because it is so painful. So if you're someone like me that has horrible cramps, something that can help you is a hot water bottle. And I know heat pads, heating packs, all of that has been used for, ever for women. But here is the hack. So what you're going to want to do is get some castor oil. I absolutely love castor oil. I use it for my liver. I use it when I'm sauning to detox, but you can use it around the time of your cycle to help with your period cramps. And what that looks like is you're going to get a flannel cloth about the size of your belly, and you're going to soak the flannel cloth in castor oil. Now, you can heat up the castor oil and then drip it on the cloth. But if you're going to use a hot water bottle or a heating pad, you're not going to need to do that. And once you have the flannel soaked cloth, you're going to just place it right above your uterus, right where you're feeling the cramps, and put that heat pad or a hot water bottle right on top. It is so soothing and so healing, and honestly, it's going to help on a physiological level as the castor oil gets absorbed into your skin, but it also helps on an energetic level. When I am doing chakra balancing sessions for women, and most women have sacral chakra imbalances, the sacral chakra is related to our womb space. We have these imbalances. And again, it goes back to the beginning of this podcast episode where we kind of despise our womb and our periods and all that our womb has to do with. And so bringing heat to that area brings attention, brings blood flow, brings energy, brings nourishment. So even throughout the month, when I'm just feeling sluggish and blah, or maybe I'm not feeling sexy, or maybe I'm having some weird cramping, I immediately get out my hot water bottle, put some castor oil on my womb space, and just lay there. Who's to say you can't do that any time of the month? So do it around your cycle, but incorporate it in your regular self-care routine. Going to that inflammation piece, like I mentioned, when we get our cycle and we're having cramping, usually we have a lot of inflammation. So women can get more rashes, more skin issues, acne, histamine overload. You can notice that you might get more sinus issues or allergies around the time of your cycle. And again, that goes back to the liver. The liver is what breaks down histamines. And when we get our cycle, our liver is working really hard to convert hormones and it can get stressed out. So if you're noticing histamine, allergy, inflammation kind of issues coming up, just working on reducing inflammation is going to be super helpful for those symptoms, as well as your uterus cramping. I mean, that's a muscle that gets very inflamed. So I use CBD. I have a CBD cream that I rub right onto my belly. CBD is going to be a pain relief. It's going to reduce inflammation. You can even take it in a tincture, internally as well. I have some amazing brands I love. I can share them with you guys. In addition, I love taking tart cherry juice. You guys know I call my tart cherry juice my Botox in a bottle. I drink it every single night. It has natural melatonin, is amazing for reducing inflammation. So as soon as I get my cycle, I am pumping the tart cherry juice. I'll drink it day and night. And then I also use my red light, my Jove light. So if you don't have a red light device, the sun has natural red light. As long as you go out the first hour of the morning or the last hour of the evening, you're going to get the most red light exposure along with the infrared light. So red light is just very healing, and I will just put it right on that womb space as well. In addition, breath work is extremely helpful for the PMSing and the cramping. So, learning to take deep belly breaths to relax the nervous system. Obviously, when we give birth, we're learning to breathe, the whole breathing routine. You can do that and learn to do breath work when you get your period cramps as well. Light movement is incredibly helpful from a Chinese medicine perspective to help move the blood flow out, to keep your fluids, your lymphatic system and everything flowing. So I know it's uncomfortable when we have our periods. We're tired, we're exhausted. So gentle movement. It is so, so important to not overdo it. We go back to that feminine energy. When we get our periods, we are not meant to do. So cancel your workouts, cancel whatever activities you can, and go into the receiving mode. That means stretching, gentle, light movement, walks, and things like that. In addition, I just prepare ahead of time. My last hack trick for you is going to be really to prepare ahead of time. Allow space in your schedule, allow time for flexibility. Be in that feminine essence as much as you can throughout the month. Work on your feminine energy. And so when you get to the point of your cycle, you can receive easier. You can get into that flow easier and not feel guilty. So I just try to map out about the time I'm going to get my cycle. I never really know, right? Going back to that whole thing. But around the time I think I may get it, I just allow for a little bit more room and flexibility. And I have conversations with people ahead of time, sharing with them, like, hey, I might get my cycle this week. So if something comes up, I'll let you know. Easy conversations. And again, just allowing this to be an education point, to spread this energy and this message to other women and allow for, the acceptance of this sacred time. And with that, I'm going to leave it with just around the topic of conversation with our partners. Something that is very challenging for a lot of women. This is something that is not easy. It goes back again to the patriarchy and the shame around it. And it's so hard for us sometimes to just talk to our partner about all of these things. And if you're having a hard time, have them listen to this podcast episode and, share with them in whatever ways you can. So, like I mentioned, when I met my now partner, I was starting to cycle regularly. He was constantly encouraging me to be in the feminine. And so I felt pretty comfortable kind of sharing with him when I was going to get my period, right? I still kept it a little taboo where I was like, hey, I think it's that time of the month, or hey, I'm kind of like cramping, I'm kind of doing this cute thing. But I started to realize that I had to have a deeper conversation. Just telling him, hey, I got my period, or hey, I'm cycling, wasn't enough information for him for to really understand what I needed from him around this time of the month. Remembering at the end of the day, as feminine energies that cycle, we need to be loved and supported. We need to be able to receive. We need to be able to allow the masculine to step up and to step in. And that was a conversation I had to sit down and have with him on an energetic level. See, I don't want him to always be in the masculine. I like being in the masculine. It is my tendency. I want to make decisions. I want to be the one busy. I want to be the one doing things all day. And we flow kind of back and forth in our energies in that way. But when I get my cycle and I tell him, hey, I got my period today, he now knows exactly what to do. Like he hears that phrase and he's like, okay, go rest, go lay down. What do you need? I'm going to make your hot water bottle. What kind of tea do you want? Like he knows the drill. I don't have to explain it every month because I had a very open conversation with him and he enjoys it. Like he cherishes that time because I really don't let him provide for me. I want to do everything myself, right? And I'm really great at that. And I don't resent him for that. I love that energy I have within myself. But he loves when he can provide for me. So within those 2 days, like he's on cloud nine, I'm in cloud nine because I get to step back. And it just is such a connection and intimate energy that we get to share with each other that brings the sacredness back to it, that brings the ritual back to it. He's like, oh, it's that time of the month. Here's the ritual we get to do together. And it's just wonderful. He gets to understand it on a deeper level. And you know what? Maybe you might not be with a partner, but let's go back to that conversation my client had with her roommate. Like, how beautiful. This does not have to happen between just couples and marriage partners. This can happen between roommates and friends and mothers and daughters and siblings and anyone in your life, your coworker. You could even say to your coworker, oh, you got your period? Like, I'll cover for you. Like, don't worry about it, and then vice versa. When it happens to you, they can cover for you. And you can, again, work within the patriarchal society, but still have that support system. Have your hacks, have these conversations, know that there can be space in your day around the time of your cycle. Prepare ahead of time. So, when it comes to the conversations, have them earlier. I have kind of coined this term that I call period approved activities. And so when I get my cycle, everyone around me knows it's time for period approved activities. And I have a mental list, and you could share it even in your notes section. And period approved activities count like puzzling, watching your favorite show, receiving maybe a massage, receiving some attention, maybe doing some gentle movement, anything that honors the feminine where you get to be in flow and you don't have to really perform or do or think or really even create. You can be creative if you want to paint and draw, but not create like a course or create content or create something for work, but just being in flow and creation is such a wonderful activity to do around your period. So I'm curious, what would be your period approved activities? What gets you in the flow? What allows you to receive? Bubble baths are great, playing with your kids, whatever that flow looks like for you. And practice. I really encourage you to practice. The next time you get your cycle, implement some of these hacks. As soon as you get it, see what you can clear out of your schedule. Go take a moment of rest, of pause. You may not want to spend it with your partner. You may want to just go do your own thing and hibernate, and that's totally okay. So just try the next time you get your cycle to implement some of these. Let me know. Again, you can share within the Facebook group, you can message me. If there is more curiosity around this topic or information I could share with you, I am happy to do so. I could even do an entire episode bringing in my holistic doctor, and we can talk about fertility and hormones. My holistic doctor, Dr. Dana, that helped heal me from mold, is like a fertility queen. I've sent many women to her to help get their hormones in order, and they've now conceived and have beautiful babies. So I could do an episode with her, or I definitely going to be bringing on Rose, my dear friend, that helped me with my own personal womb healing and all of that, and has taught me everything I know about getting back into my feminine essence and aligning the sacredness of my period. So stay tuned for that episode. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our Taboo Topic Tuesdays here on the podcast. And thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode, bearing with me on a topic that, is very personal for me, and I know for all women. Everyone's gone through their journey, and it's a learning journey. And some women, make it past their menstruation period and go into menopause and still have a lot of these issues and shame that they have to heal, even though they're not getting a cycle. Our wombs still matter, and we have them until the day we leave this earth. And so if you are after your menstruation days, there is still an opportunity to heal your womb space on an energetic level. It's never too late for that. So again, thank you, my holistic soul sisters, for being a part of the community, a part of the tribe, for tuning in and sharing and spreading the message. So I hope that you pass this forward to some female in your life that could really hear this message, and we can kind of change the conversation, but really the energy and the sacredness around our cycles. So I will catch you in the next episode, and until then, go ahead and follow us on Instagram at holistic.soul.sisters. And if you're not in the Facebook community, just find us over on Facebook, or you can just go to the link in the show notes and join us over there for more sacred conversation and connection and community. And until then, my holistic soul sisters, keep healing holistically and growing spiritually.